Good evening and welcome to the Conversation Tree. I'm your host, Stanton Combs, and under the Conversation Tree, tonight we will learn together, share ideas, and be inspired. And we want you also to be involved. Make sure you share some comments, ask questions, and also share the live. That's the only way we would get to more persons. As you could see, the banner says, help us to get the show to more people. So please share. Today, we will be speaking with a highly motivated young woman who created an organization so that young men and women could learn and dialogue about global issues in a safe and supportive environment. And our guest tonight is Miss Nafesha Richardson. She is the founder of SPARK SVG, and she is 22 years old, quite young, from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. She recently completed her Bachelor's of Law at the University of the West Indies, Caville campus. And she attended various international youth conferences, including the Global Young Leaders Conference in China, the One Young World Summit in the Netherlands. And she's presently a member of the Women Deliver 2020 cohort of gender activists. And she's the executive committee member of Youth Transition for the Commonwealth Youth Gender and Equality Network. And she is the only youth champion for the Caribbean region for the Escazu Agreement, which promotes environmental justice. Nafesha's passion for youth empowerment led her to found the SPARK SVG as a passion project in early May of 2019. And let's get Miss Nafesha on the live. Good night, Nafesha. How are you doing?
Good night, Stanton. Thank you for having me. Good night to everyone on the live. I'm watching on my phone as well, so I can see the comments here. Good night, everyone.
Right. Let's go to the comments quickly. We have Williams Warwick online, and we have Vinette Franklin, but we also have, in the comments, we also have some other persons, a whole lot of other persons watching online. So, Nafesha, you're pretty young at 22, and well, we heard all of your involvement and your achievements so far. Let's go back a bit. Tell me about your school life. Which high school you attended, and a bit about university life.
Sure. I attended the St. Vincent Girls High School. If I remember correctly, I graduated in 2014. Then after that, I took the usual route onto SVGCC at the Division of Arts, Sciences, and General Studies. There I did management of business, I did literatures of English and law. And I guess I got a taste of law there, and it was exciting, it was different. I got to understand that, everything has a bit of law in it. And I was inspired to pursue a bachelor's of law at the University of the West Indies, Caville campus, which despite the pandemic, I have successfully completed. It was really a challenging venture going through my final semester, having to come home, having everything cut short, but it's done. And I'm very grateful for that achievement.
Right, but beside having a taste of law from previously, what would have inspired you to get into law?
I think it's really a combination of things. I got my first real experience with law at SVGCC, but I think having done it there and having seen the good, the good and the bad sometimes that law can do, but truly the good that it can do for people, and the fact that no matter what we do in life, law is involved. And it's something that I don't even know if I want to be a lawyer per se, but I know that it's so important to have basic understandings of contracts and torts, and understanding your liabilities and where you can be criminally liable and things like that. Just the practicality of the degree, it was truly inspiring. And because, for instance, at SGCC, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, it was refreshing to have this degree that really, it's open and it gives you a lot of options. I can go into journalism, I can be a writer, I can go into political science. It really broadens your perspectives. And I think even now in the advocacy space, I'm seeing how important it is to have the legal background. For instance, with Escazu, it's a treaty, so a lot of it's um, a lot of legal lingo, and I think having the degree, it's really helped me. Even though I just finished, it's so useful, and I can see that for years to come, it's something that I would always be grateful for.
Right. And looking at most of your involvement, it surrounds youth and it also surrounds gender. Tell me a bit about the conference you attended in China and the Netherlands. Most interesting, I want to know about, what was the takeaways and how it relate to Little St. Vincent and the Grenadines compared to the other countries who would have participated.
Sure. In 2015, I attended the Global Young Leaders Conference in China. I went with two other students from the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Community College who were recommended by our Literatures of English teacher. And the three of us decided to take this random venture and say, let's go to China, let's see what this conference is all about. At that conference, it was basically a mixture of theory and practical. So we were learning about global issues on paper, and then we were going into the field and visiting a lot of the local and historical sites in China and getting a feel of diplomacy and what that can look like. That was my first truly international experience, I would say. And my takeaway from that one was just the power of the Caribbean. Even though there were three of us there from St. Vincent, there were students from Barbados, students from Jamaica, students from Grenada. And we were the smallest groups in terms of, a global perspective, but we dominated the conference basically. And no matter what group we were in, the Caribbean voice was always heard. And it's so important that even though we're small geographically, that our voices are heard. And then that led me to apply to attend the One Young World Conference in the Netherlands, which is a much larger conference, and it was, I think to me, it was one of the most brilliant experiences I've had. It was a 3-day conference in the Netherlands, and they basically brought speakers from all across the world. Terry Crews was there, prime ministers. There were judges from the International Court of Law, and it was actually held at that. Our opening ceremony was held there. So I think it's a similar takeaway where a lot of the Caribbean delegates, we banded together and we said, okay, it's about 10 of us versus 500 other youth delegates from across the world. But at the end of the day, there was a Caribbean person on the team writing the recommendations. We were speakers. We were meeting a lot of the delegates. We were doing interviews, and together we kind of strategized how we were going to get our voices heard, and working together to ensure that at least one person was in a space so that no matter what happened, a Caribbean voice was being heard. And we spoke not just for our own countries, we spoke for each other. And I think it was those two conferences, it was basically the same takeaway of how if the Caribbean works together, we can not only develop ourselves as individual countries, but definitely as a region.
Right. And your involvement in what is Women Deliver 2020, the cohort of gender activists?
Women Deliver, it's basically a 2-year program where this year they basically requested about 300 delegates from across the world. From what I understand, I'm the only one from St. Vincent, and in a small group from the Caribbean. And basically the whole idea with Women Deliver is they start off with a 3-month teaching program. So they're giving courses basically on sexual and reproductive health rights, domestic violence, body positivity. So they're taking the first months to really hone in on our expertise, to teach us about key areas, because we were selected because we've already been doing work in terms of gender advocacy, but the whole idea is to expand our advocacy. And then 2 years down the road, hopefully, in terms of the pandemic, there's usually a conference. Last year it was in Vancouver, Canada. They haven't declared where the next one would be in 2022. But basically, the whole idea is to bring together gender activists from across the globe and have us not only work as a team, but strategize how, for instance, in the region, we can spread our word. And they also provide a lot of key opportunities for like expanding our work. So we have to do monthly and quarterly updates on the work that we're doing. And then they would put us on global platforms to say, okay, we have a young leader in the Caribbean from St. Vincent doing this kind of work who's hosting, for example, SPARK SVG. There's a young lady from Trinidad, I think her name is Ashley Burnett, doing excellent work. And if it wasn't for Women Deliver, I would not have probably known about her work. So they're really just trying to create a network of gender advocates and activists. And from there, once we work together, we can not only create change, but hone in on the work that we're already doing and truly develop ourselves more holistically as gender activists.
Right. What would you say is the biggest issue, the biggest gender issue that the Caribbean is faced with now? Well, you could speak to both St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and it might be the Caribbean.
Definitely. The biggest issue, I think, as it pertains to gender in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I think across the Caribbean for sure, is domestic violence. It's rearing its head so often that it's truly becoming, it's something that we can't ignore. And I know it's been going on for years, and there's been talk, and it's hush hush in some societies and communities. It's very hush hush. But when people are dying, when their lives are being put at risk, and I mean, it shouldn't even have to get to that point. But when we realize that people are unable to deal with conflict and are unable to manage home issues, and it has to turn into somebody losing their life, or somebody being abused, somebody being financially neglected, somebody being emotionally or verbally abused, it's an issue that we really, really need to deal with, because when our own people are being so downtrodden in their homes, it's impossible for them to go out in their communities and strive. When you're in your own home and you don't feel safe, it's impossible for you to go out in your job and excel, or to go to school and excel, or to go to a conference and excel. I think we really need to focus on our people in terms of gender-based violence and domestic violence, and try to put an end to these practices. It's not something that can be done overnight, for sure. It's something that's going to take extensive training, extensive public dialogue, and just talking about it. I think we really need to talk about it as something that's not happening, for sure. But gender-based violence, domestic violence, it's a key issue that continues to rear its ugly head in St. Vincent, in the region. And until we put a stop to it, we wouldn't see our women, our young girls, our people in general striving.
And how much work is being done? Well, at least for some of the groups that you're involved in, especially like the CYA and the Women's Deliver. Any work was done? Well, maybe activities that aim to address in domestic violence?
Well, with Women Deliver, I can't say. I know that they've been doing work for a long time, but I can't say specifically what has been done because I just joined. With SIGEN, that's the Commonwealth Youth Gender and Equality Network. They're always writing basically, like, what do you call it? Articles that basically condemn domestic violence. We do a lot of work in terms of, we are running a Reform 53 campaign, which is about reforming laws that discriminate against women and girls. And I don't think in St. Vincent it's an issue where we have laws that endorse domestic violence, but I think the follow through in terms of our police following up on it, I think that's where our core issue lies. So I think the Reform 53 campaign really ties into the whole idea of reforming not just the laws, but the ecosystem that surrounds gender-based violence and domestic violence.
Right. So let's move to the Escazu Agreement. This might be a new term for some persons, and the Escazu Agreement promotes environmental justice, and you're the only young champion from the Caribbean region that's associated with the entire Escazu agreement. So if you could you, for persons who may not have heard about the Escazu agreement, could you sum it up for us? What was the agreement all about?
Basically, the Escazu Agreement, it stems from Principle 10 of the Rio Declaration, and it aims to secure three rights. As it pertains to environmental and human rights matters, it tries to ensure access to information, which we know is an issue in the Caribbean where even apart from environmental matters, just generally being able to access data and facts, it's quite difficult. It focuses on public participation. So a major part of the Escazu Agreement is that the entire public is involved in the process so that it's not just the government laying down policies, but they are informed by the public because it's for the public. And the final aspect of it is access to justice for environment and environmental matters. So, in the event that an individual feels that they have been wronged for an environmental matter or a environmental matter that has to deal with human rights, they can, under the Escazu Agreement, bring a claim. So those are the main three rights that it aims to secure. But just to give it some context, for instance, it focuses on Latin America and the Caribbean. So in Latin America, a major issue that they have is that a lot of their environmental activists and their environmental defenders are actually being killed on the front lines because of their work. So that's where they're pushing for it. In the Caribbean region, I think what we can identify with is that we have beautiful islands, beautiful landscapes, and there are always issues with like mining sand from the beaches, or in terms of like hoteliers and cutting off access to the beaches. So, and of course, like I mentioned before as well, access to information. So I think those are the key areas where it impacts St. Vincent and the Caribbean. They selected 5 youth champions, including myself, back in February or March ago. And basically, our role is to identify and create key opportunities to share about the agreement. So, what I've been doing so far is trying to do press releases and basically all types of media campaigns and media ventures. The plans that we had, because it basically started off just before COVID-19 really took off, we had to basically convert everything to online discussion. So we've had a couple of webinars. I started a page dedicated to the Caribbean. So it's called at Escazu Caribbean on Instagram. So I encourage everyone here to follow it. And that's basically the hub for all of the information in the Caribbean. Recently, the OECS actually signed a declaration of their support because so far only 4 Caribbean countries have ratified the agreement, St. Vincent and the Grenadines being one, luckily. It has also been ratified by Guyana, Antigua and Barbuda, and St. Kitts and Nevis. In total, it requires 11 signatures, and they're currently at 9. So by September, which is roughly a month and a half away from now, we need 2 more countries to come on to bring the agreement into force. If by September we don't get those 2 countries, the agreement doesn't go away, but it just means that we have to work 10 times harder to bring the agreement into force. So that's a general wrap up, I guess, of what the Escazu Agreement is and why it's so important for us in the Caribbean to support it and support its implementation.
All right, and while we are on some environmental chat, we're gonna just go to. I want to just talk a bit about the Sustainable Development Goals. Just for information, because the program is all about learning. So somebody may learn something new. What I do, I have a screen share here. Let me try this. Share my screen. Right. So I have some of the, well, the 17 SDGs. So if you could go through, what are the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals,
Okay,
and
sure.
the importance?
The Sustainable Development Goals, they were drafted by the United Nations with, of course, the input of the member states. And they follow the Millennium Development Goals. And basically, the entire idea behind them is to create global goals so that as countries, we're not just haphazardly fighting. Okay, Barbados wants to do this, and Vincent wants to do this. The United States wants to do this, the UK wants to do this. We have a framework of global goals that, as a world, these are the objectives that we want to pursue. There are 17 of them, like they're here listed on the screen. They range from no poverty to climate action and climate reduction, clean water and sanitation. And the 17th goal is partnership for the goals, which basically involves ensuring that countries work together and also noting that the goals intersect because they're goals that deal with poverty, but they're also goals that deal with gender equality. And we can see where gender equality and poverty, they can intersect. Goals that deal with life on land and water and clean sanitation, those goals would also intersect. So these sustainable development goals, they're really practical and they're simple and they're easy for anyone to follow. Basically, they're not binding to say that any country must achieve a particular goal by a particular date, even though the deadline for achieving the goals is 2030. They're basically aspirational goals. 2020 actually marks the decade of action, so it's 10 years away from the 2030 deadline, and it's really supposed to revamp our dedication towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. The motto for the goals is that we should leave no one behind, and that just testifies how all encompassing the goals really are. So that, I mean, if you think about things like intersectionality, we recognize that a Black woman may have different issues than a white man, and a Black woman who is poor may have different issues than a Hindu man that has a disability. So they really try to pinpoint the different intersects of life and human life and basically work out how we can consider all of these different aspects as a global framework and how countries can support each other to achieve these goals. I think particularly for the Caribbean, the SDGs are especially important because it sets us up in a way that we work together as a region always, but we also can recognize where these goals would impact our place in the global framework. Where, for instance, we know we have CARICOM, we know we have the OECS, but when we look at a global goal, we can, if we're in, like, for example, the UN General Assembly, we can say, okay, climate change is affecting St. Vincent differently than it affects the US. And it gives us a key opportunity and a real in to share our unique perspectives and have these unique perspectives considered in the global platform and the global arena.
Right. And I guess it's something that groups could use, especially environmental groups, could use as a guideline in doing their work.
Oh, definitely. Because, like I said, they're so all encompassing. They're the framework that I use for SPARK SVG to ensure that, because I feel like there's no one group that involves young men and young women that focuses on this broad range of goals. And that was my aim with the organization. So by using these SDGs as a framework, it ensures that no young person in St. Vincent is left behind. So that when we draft our framework in terms of our speakers or the topics that we want to discuss, there's something there for everyone, and no one feels as though this isn't really there for me. So we try to ensure that every goal in some way is touched, to ensure that it covers that wide cross range and cross section of people, and the intricacies of the needs that such a wide cross section of people have.
All right. You want to just shout out some folks, Paula? You have Rosie, you have Linda John, Kenny Ford, good night. Josephine King, good night. So, Ms. Richardson, tell me now, let's move on to SPARK SVG, which is your passion project.
My baby.
It was started, it's a pretty young organization. It was started in May of last year. What is SPARK SVG all about?
Sure. I started Spark in May 2019. I had just finished my tenure as the president of VINSA, the Vincentian Student Association at Cave Hill. So I myself had a lapse where, okay, I wasn't doing anything. But I also noticed that I always look outside of St. Vincent for these conferences, like One Young World, like the Global Young Leaders Conference. I always have to look outside of St. Vincent, or even sometimes outside of the Caribbean, for these types of global discussions with young people. And I said, I'm home for summer. Why not create that forum? Why not create that space for our young people to really sit down and talk about what's happening, what we're facing, but as well what's happening in the world, and how our issues as young people, how much they matter, and how much, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, our issues will become not necessarily to say adult issues, but as young people, we have a duty and we have the right to speak up about what we're facing, speak up about what the world is facing, and come up with discussions, because we're citizens too. We have rights just like everyone else does. But I found that there was nowhere for young people to say, let's talk about climate change. Let's talk about the job market. Let's talk about rape. Let's talk about gender-based violence. Let's talk about how to write a CV. And it's really broad, but like I said, it tries to ensure that everyone is touched. So last year we had the first ever SPARK SVG Youth Summit. It was at the Methodist Church Hall. We started at about, registration was 8, the summit kicked off at 9, and it was a beautiful, beautiful day. We had about 200 people present, and it was actually streamed on VC3, so people were able to watch afterwards. But we had topics like quality education and the importance of seeking opportunities through quality education. Our featured speaker was Nikolai Edwards. He's currently actually running to be Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and he's still in his 20s, but I brought him to just show young people that your age is just a number, and it doesn't matter that you're 20, that you're a teenager. You have the right to speak up in society, and you have a right to be an active citizen and play these types of roles. So that's the general idea of SPARK SVG. So at the summit, I was truly amazed, because I was kind of worried that people would have been timid about asking questions, and I was almost drawn to draft up some mock questions, but none of that was necessary. The young people were engaged, they were asking questions. We almost had to limit some of the questions, and they had an opportunity to do actually networking with the speakers afterwards, which today, some of the speakers still tell me that some of the delegates continue to reach out to them. So that also shows the longevity and the impact of the event. Even though it was just for a day, it's still impacting people's lives. I had a young lady message me, and she was like, I'm so excited, even though it's online, I'm so excited for SPARK SVG 2020, because it was unlike anything that I've experienced. And she basically just testified that it propelled her to apply for different opportunities because she felt as though, you know, she was empowered and she was inspired to ignite positive change in her community. So that's the whole idea of Spark SVG. I mean, we're still growing. We're just a baby, just a year now. But there's so many other opportunities that I think we can delve into. We're hoping to do mentorships in the future. I'm really hoping to one day be able to sponsor someone to attend One Young World, because I think that's where the whole idea came from. And yeah, just continue to interact with young people and hear their side of the story. I think what's missing, particularly for young people in St. Vincent, is a National Youth Council. I've seen what it can do. In St. Lucia, the National Youth Council is very, very vocal, and they're very, very effective in terms of advocating for the youth voice, as well as I think the Youth Council in Guyana. They're very, very vocal, very active, and I think that youth voice in global matters, in local matters, it's so, so important. And I'm almost trying to act as a mock youth council basically, but just trying to basically emulate that idea of bringing young people together, one, but also ensuring that our collective voice is heard.
Right. And outside of the summits, how do you engage? Do you have like regular meetings, or well, outside of COVID also?
But we've created a online network because what basically happened was that I had to dive right into my final semester, my final year of classes. So that really limited a lot of the work that we were able to do in the September to November, December arena, but we still maintain the online presence and interact with the delegates there. But we've created now an online network, which I think is what I really wanted to see. So now all of the young leaders after the summit, they can maintain that network. And we've done online campaigns, for instance, when they had the 12 days of activism in November, we got all types of young people, gym trainers, students in Canada, for instance, to actually do a little placard saying what their message was about gender-based violence. And I think that was really, really instrumental. But I think now that we have the online network and the online platform, we're really able to work with the people that attended and past the summit, engage them a lot more and a lot more deeply so that we can understand their strengths and definitely be able to propel people. For instance, I'm really hoping to feature more young entrepreneurs because I think we have so many young people who are so talented and they're doing crafts, they're doing nails, they're doing all types of businesses. And I think propelling their work is so important, propelling our young women in STEM, our young men that are studying medicine, young men and women studying medicine. So basically the whole idea is to bring them together, propel their work, propel their voices so that even if they're not heard individually, they can say, okay, SPARK SVG they've got my back and they're helping me to get my message across.
Right. And so let's go to the upcoming summit. Actually, tomorrow is still the deadline for registration.
Well, tomorrow is the official registration deadline, but I think we've been receiving a lot of positive feedback, and a lot of people are saying, oh my gosh, you guys need to extend the deadline. I want to tell my youth group. I want to tell my girl guides group. So it's a very highly likely possibility that the deadline will be extended because the summit isn't until August. But I really wanted to give a 2-week break to see what registration would have been like. But it's very possible that registration will be extended perhaps for another week also, so probably to August 7th. But you can definitely stay tuned to our pages for that update. But you can look forward to that. But I would still encourage everyone that's on hand now to register. It's very simple. If you go to our website, www.sparksvg.com, there is an option at the top just to register, and all of the information about the summit is there. And you can also stay tuned to our Instagram and Facebook pages where we have updates about who the speakers are. We're currently dropping one speaker a day, and I can give you a taste of the lineup and probably reveal some of those who have not been announced as yet. So the first,
let me put up the let me get the post up. You might have to shift your head out of the way to the
okay,
right.
no problem.
So this
So
is
the
the poster.
yes, the first day it's called Spark. And the whole idea for the first day is that we just want to spark ideas, spark something new in young people. So the speakers include Giselle Miller. She's a certified psychologist, and she'll basically be speaking on how young people can look within themselves, especially for those who suffer with low self-esteem. We have a Trinidadian speaker referred to as the Millennial Mind, and he'll be speaking on success secrets for unlocking your fullest potential. He's actually an author of a book called, I believe, The Millennial Mind. We have from the Consent Workshop, Tosin, who will be speaking about consent in teenage relationships, which I think is an issue that isn't spoken about enough. And I think as young people, it's something that we need to discuss and understanding what is consent, what is yes, what is a no, and that, consent under alcohol isn't true consent. And the second day is called Ignite. So after you have that spark, the second day is supposed to truly ignite a flame or ignite a fire for a particular passion that you may have. So we have Stacey Balcom. She's the operator of a new business called Hibiscus Financial Advisors. And her segment is called Money Moves for Millennials. And the idea is basically to inspire young people about how they can grow their their finances. Last year, we focused on entrepreneurship. We had an entire panel of local entrepreneurs, including Lyndon James, Karen Vera. We had Nyasha Morford, Miss Games, and their chefs, their fitness people, their creatives. And the whole idea was to bring them together and show how you can start a business, but we recognize that not everybody wants to start a business, not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. So Miss Balcom's segment is basically about how you can grow your finances, whether or not you're an entrepreneur. You can be a regular person working a regular job, but how you can invest as a young person quite early. And we always hear about this new term, not a new term, but it's a newly trending term, generational wealth. So how as a young person you can truly hone in on that kind of wealth now, and what you need to do now in terms of savings and budgeting. Next on that lineup, we have Elizabeth and LaQuinta. They're actually my schoolmates, and they started a new organization called SVG. And their segment will be about diving into the blue economy. They're both from Beckway, and Beckway is known for the fishing industry. So their segment is basically about how we can use the ocean as a money maker, basically. The Sunday lineup includes Dr. Halima Deshong. She'll be speaking on domestic violence and conflict in the home. Like I mentioned, I think this is where we really need to have the discussion, and she's a gender expert. She was a lecturer at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus, and I think she's working now at the UN, but she knows her stuff. And I wouldn't put anyone but Dr. Deshong to speak to young people about domestic violence. We have a speaker from the Bahamas, Alicia Wallace, and her segment is about building a movement for social change. So say as a young person, you love the environment, you are such an environmental activist, but you don't know how to get your message across. You don't know how to say, I want to start a campaign. How do I start a campaign? I want to write to my government. I want to, create some sort of social change. Alicia has done excellent work with campaigns in her organization called Equality Bahamas. So her segment is all about showing you, I guess, the framework of what you need to do to build a campaign, because I think a lot of people just say, I'm going to create a flyer, gonna make a campaign, but they don't think into the logistics of, you know, what your messaging is like and what your goals would be short term and long term. On that lineup for Sunday as well, we have France George, who actually spoke last year, but this year his segments will be about youth and voter education. We know that we are scheduled to have an election pretty soon, maybe this year, maybe early next year, who knows. So the idea with Franz's segment is to tell people, young people particularly, not about who to vote for, but about the importance of voting. And as a young person, we know a lot of young people, they don't vote. They say, the voting thing, not really for me. I don't really see why I have to vote. But it's a civic responsibility that we all have. And his segments will basically be going into why it's so important to vote, how our ancestors had to fight for the right to vote, and things like universal adult suffrage and the history of voting. So that's what he'll be speaking about. And it's actually leading up to a campaign that will be launched very soon, but I won't reveal too much about that. And then we have finally Shanika John, who will be speaking about navigating the new normal. She actually works at the Ministry of Health, and the idea of her segment is to help young people through the pandemic and post pandemic. I myself am having a quite hard time planning my life. I just finished my degree. I don't know if I'm going to go to law school. I don't know if I'm going to do my master's. I don't know if I should apply to a school because I don't want to go to a school in a pandemic, and I don't know what my future will be like in a pandemic and how things can completely change. So her wrap up, and I think her segment is about life after COVID-19 and adjusting, and how even though, you know, we're facing this life altering thing, the pandemic, because I never thought that school could have just closed down, you know. It's
Yeah.
something I don't think we've ever seen. Airports shutting down, schools shutting down, churches closing. So after going through something so traumatic, how can young people, you know, reignite whatever passions they had and go after their goals? So that's taste. We have a lot of guest performers, guest speakers. We can't reveal everything, but
Yeah.
that's your idea. And I didn't think I said it for the final day, but the theme for the final day is explode. So after you've sparked and you've ignited your fire, you're supposed to be exploding on the third day and truly deciding how, okay, after I've learned all of this, how am I going to incorporate it into my daily life? So yeah, that's the lineup for the summit.
And then I think what's really lovely is that the entire thing is online, is virtual, right?
Yes, we last year it's nice when you're in a room and you can feel the energy of the
Mm,
room. I think that's something that we'll definitely miss because I mean the applause, there was one segment where people were standing up and singing. It won't be the same, but I think as well, now that we're online, we're able to reach more speakers and more delegates. Um,
mhm.
and as well, we never got to do a summit for 3 days because as simple as it looks, it's very, very expensive having to host the summit. And I try to make it as professional and, you know, just to emulate what I experienced at One Young World, at China, in the Netherlands, to truly give young people that experience. It was very, very expensive to do. So I think we were able to make Summit completely free. So I want to make that clear. Registration is 100% free. And I don't think this is the kind of information you can get anywhere for free. 3 days in the comfort of your home. You can sit back with a glass of juice, with a glass of wine, whatever suits you.
Yeah.
You can sit back and really learn something new and decide, okay, I've sat here for these 3 days, I've learned something, and now I want to execute a particular goal in my life and really ignite a part of my life that maybe I was a bit afraid, a bit timid about, you know, pursuing.
Yeah, and I think especially for the youths in the Grenadines, if it wasn't virtual, they would have had to travel to the mainland and find accommodation for 3 or 4 days. So
Definitely, that's
especially,
the issue that we faced last year, especially because it's the program went a bit late, and we had some people there from the Grenadines, but they actually missed some of the end bits of it because they had to catch their boats and go home. Well, I think that was for people in Beckwith for sure, and I think even for people in the southern Grenadines, it will be a lot more difficult. So it's really allowing us to reach a lot more people, even people in the northern parts of St. Vincent, because I remember specifically at the end of the summit last year, we were talking about the need for the National Youth Council. And there was a young lady there, I believe she was from Oya or Fancy, and it was approaching 5:30. And she was saying, I'm here. I don't know how I'm going home. I don't know if I'm going to get a van tonight, but the discussion was just so impactful for her that she had to stay. She just said, I can't miss out on this type of discussion because I don't know when I'm going to get it again. And she stayed there. She really, afterwards, I was able to speak to her, and she once again just told me how much she appreciated that kind of forum. And it really shows just, it doesn't matter where you're from the most northern part of St. Vincent, the most southern island in the Grenadines. We have so many young people with so much potential, but it's reaching out to them and creating platforms like this. I know now for sure for the next summit, I'm going to have to find a way that even if we do it in a room, that we can still have it on a virtual platform as well, so that no one feels left out, and like the SDGs, no one is left behind for sure. So it's really a lesson for me, but I know for sure it's going to be very different, but also a real positive change, I think, as well for the summit.
Because that's one of the things that COVID would do. COVID would leave organizations and businesses with a lot of new practices. Well, practices that should have been practiced before, but it would certainly leave them as cost saving practices. Would you take
Definitely.
registrations from persons overseas for this
Yeah,
summit?
it's not limited to St. Vincent. We had a couple of people registering from Trinidad. I saw a random one from Sri Lanka, so that was cool. But yeah, the registration is open to anyone, any young person in not just St. Vincent, not just the Caribbean. It's open to anyone in the world, because I think a young person who comes from somewhere, for example, like Sri Lanka, hopefully they come and they are in the chat. They can share their experience, which may be completely different from us here in St. Vincent, but I'm sure that there are lessons that we can learn from one another. So it's not limited geographically at all.
Yeah, I see this. Getting big, especially this year with the virtual with the totally virtual summit. It could next year it could attract persons maybe to St. Vincent for
That's
something like
my
this.
definitely my dream for it as well. To I mean, it's a lot more work in terms of scheduling and trying to ensure that people are safe and their accommodation, but to be able to bring in young people from across the region, from across the world, and say, that there's this amazing youth summit that happens every year in St. Vincent, and to be able to target regional youth groups to say every year they want to send a group of young people. I think that's really the direction that I would love to see SPARK SVG go. But I really want to make sure that the work is done home first, and that our young people are secure and they feel covered, and we can touch as many young people here as possible, because every day there's somebody who's going to be 18 to 30, So I think once we really perfect it, or not really perfect it, but we get that blueprint for St. Vincent down, it would be amazing to expand and invite young people from across the world to attend.
And what about the persons? What about persons over 30 who are still feeling youthful and want to still catch up? Maybe they didn't have a chance to you know to catch up on these things, or maybe it wasn't available during their youth. How that would work?
Yeah, the the target, I like to think of it as a target age range. So we're trying to reach young people 18 to 30. But it's like I said, it's a target. So if we attract somebody 31, 32, 35, 40 who is young or young at heart, I think there's also, but once again, the lessons that they can learn and the lessons that they can impart upon a young person that is there. Once again, with young people 15, 16, my issue with that age range is things like parental consent. But um, for the virtual summit, for sure, they're free to sign up, because I think, age, sometimes it you can have a very mature 15, 14, 13-year-old that can. I mean, we had some young people last year that were like 14, 30, and they were like, we want to come, we want to talk about it too, I want to be a part of discussions. And I told them, you guys can come, but just, be aware that, it's not your target age range. And I really want to, because we're focusing on the 18 to 30, it would allow us to really hone in on discussions that match their particular needs and the initiatives that would really impact them. But it's just a target. It's not a strict thing where if you're 31, you would be rejected and you can't come. Or if you're 15, that will tell you, oh, you can't come. You can still sign up. But I think anything after that, if there's anything that, one good thing that we have, especially for the young people, is that last year we had certified psychologists there for the entire time. And it's something that I hope to replicate again this year, so that if some people are feeling particularly emotionally triggered, there's somebody there professional that they can speak to. So that's something I hope to really replicate again this year with the online platform. But yeah, the age range is more of a target than a strict guideline.
Right. And well, going back to the outside of the summit setting, now that you mention like counseling services, would you have, or do you normally have that service available, like um maybe all year round, with persons who are part of the Spark network could maybe reach out to a help desk and get support?
It's something that we always encourage, activities, because we didn't really have many like physical or um, like actual activities throughout the past year. It wasn't like um, we didn't have them there, but we always encourage that if you're going through something, if you're feeling like you're triggered, if you're having any types of thoughts, we always encourage young people to reach out to someone, to talk to someone, even if it's someone at home first, and then they can refer you to a professional. We always definitely encourage it, because I for one am not a certified psychologist. I can only speak about things and I can only bring in certain speakers, but in terms of actually dealing with someone's mental health, and that again is a topic that really needs a lot more discussion, I think, in St. Vincent and across the Caribbean. We don't ever assume that type of responsibility, and we always encourage other, well, the young people that are there and the young people that we interact with to seek that type of help. And we work along, well, we worked in the past. Miss Roselle Solomon, she was one of our speakers, and I know for sure that if anything happens, I can always call on her. And this year we have Giselle, who is also a certified psychologist. So I know that we always try to have that element there. And it's something that definitely we can work on in terms of letting them know, okay, this is a particular line that you can call, or we have that person there whenever we have an activity. I'll definitely try to ensure that that's present for sure.
All right. So it's almost about wrap up time, but let's look at the website quickly. Let me get the screen share up, and I will go to Spark. sparksvg.com. So this is the landing page. You get some information on the summary on this area. And
yeah, so if you click on the flyer there, that's where you can register for this year's youth summit. We also, in the news area, you can kind of keep up with some of the activities that we've been pursuing throughout the year as well. But
right.
the website is pretty user friendly, I think, and we're updating it constantly. So we're going to have the biographies of the speakers from last year and this year updated pretty soon. And we're also looking to, well, we have the members only area, but it's not on this website. We're linking that as well.
Right.
Yeah, I encourage everyone to sign up and attend the summit. It really will be a life changing, life altering event. And I don't want anyone to miss out on it.
Let's see the registration form. Oh, right. Yeah, so I would encourage persons to register. And then you could read up about the SPARK SVG organization here.
And just as we say it there, I am not an island. I don't function alone. I have a wonderful team of youth volunteers, friends, family that work with me to ensure that the Instagram posts that you see, they're up on time and they help with the planning and brainstorming the speakers. And I really couldn't do it without them. So I also like to take this chance just to shout out all of the amazing volunteers that we have that work so hard and are so dedicated to ensuring that our work comes off.
All right. So we have the social media. Contacts the Instagram at spark_SVG, Facebook Spark SVG, and Twitter Spark SVG _. That's correct for the Twitter.
Yes, that's correct.
Right. So, Nafesha, any last remarks you want to add before we wrap up?
Sure. Well, once again, thank you for having me on this show. I think it's a really, really excellent initiative that you're carrying on, and I just want to commend you for that as well, because I was looking before I came on, I was looking at some of the previous discussions that you were having with sustainable grenadines, and I think one about seabirds, and I said, wow, I mean, I wish I was there listening. So I'm definitely going to stay tuned for your future discussions, as I know you're going to have some really amazing topics. Sign up, register, join Spark SVG. Once you register, you're going to gain access to our network of other young leaders. So you'll get to interact with the ones from last year, and you'll basically be a part of the Spark family for the rest of your life. And I think that it is really a unique opportunity, is something that I really want to see grow, develop, flourish past my lifetime to becoming a movement into Vincent of young people that, you know, they're fearless. They know their rights, they know what they can do, and they execute, and they're active members of society. I think in the global arena, we see so much. We see like Greta Thunberg always promoting environmental activism, and I really hope to see more Caribbean activists coming up and speaking up and speaking out about not just issues, but about solutions and how we can work together to create solutions for our local issues for sure. So register for the Youth Summit 2020. You can follow our pages. Registration will be extended, probably. So look out for that as well, and share everything. Tell a young person that you think may really need it. And yes, thank you to everyone who has supported us. We got a flow of support from people from all across the world last year who just wanted to sponsor somebody to attend. So we thank everyone that has supported us in the past. We truly appreciate your work. And we just look forward to growing and glowing and sparking, igniting and exploding with everyone. So thank you.
Yes, we had some comments coming in. Love this. Keep up the good work from Miss Ashley. We have Miss John. Some of your friends and
I'm seeing a lot of family there. Hi, Auntie Brenda. Hi, Richard. Hi, Mommy. The family support is strong. Definitely
yeah.
strong.
Yeah, so the technology is supposed to make the world smaller, and the conversation tree is trying to make SVG smaller in terms of sharing the knowledge and connecting with people. So thanks again, Ms. Richardson, for joining in. And I know it wouldn't be the last time we have you at such a young age. You have a wealth of knowledge, so we had to tap in some more. We could do an entire show on the Escazu Agreement,
Oh yeah.
and
That's
and
so
then
fun.
we will do a post. We'll try to do a post show after the summit for you to just tell the persons postmortem of the summit. So I want to thank you again for joining us, and hope we see each other next time. And
Yes, thank you, thank you. Stay safe.
to all the persons who logged on, good night, and thanks for viewing as usual.